Good morning. Welcome to our Tuesday, November 9th, regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code 54953E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location will not be provided for this meeting. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young. She's on mute.
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
I can see her.
Yes. President Lenny.
I'm here. We are now at the point of public comment, beginning of our closed session meetings. If members of the public wish to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. When prompted, state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we'll have you contact staff. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the time allotted has concluded. Risha, do we have any speakers?
At this time, we have 5. I currently have 5 hands, and I'm going to start at 6, 7. They're going to continue. So I'll start with Randy Hernandez. Okay. Randy, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Yes, good morning, all. My name is Randy Hernandez. I've been in plant maintenance mechanics for over 24 years and currently a member of the Local 44 contract negotiating team. I'd like to share an experience that I had some years ago. At the end of one particular day, I get a notice from my supervisor, an assignment to go out to secure and open access to our interceptor there at Oakport. Somebody had stolen the covers, and this was located in the middle of a public parking lot. So without any hesitation, a partner and I, we reported out there, assessed the situation, secured the situation temporarily, and we had to procure materials and supplies that we needed. Well, during the course of that work and securing that open area that's large enough for a vehicle to drive into, we worked 4 or 5 hours without food, water, or a restroom. So when we were done, secured that we had put covers on temporary plywood, we stopped at a store on the way back to the plant. This is near evening time, and we wanted to get something to drink. So we know that we're in the eyes of public, and we have to watch what we do. That's part of our job, our actions. So we go in there, purchase something to drink, non-alcoholic, of course, and make sure it's not in a bag so that we hold it open so that everybody can see what we purchased. And we proceed back to the plant. The next day, my supervisor calls me up and he says, "Hey, next time be careful where you stop by." Although we had stopped by a market deli, it was reported as a liquor store. So he knows that, we're trustworthy. We would not stop at a liquor store and buy any kind of alcoholic beverage. So he just advised us to be careful. So I just wanted to share that example as one of the examples that, the essential workers, the Local 444 have to deal with on a daily basis. And not only adversity with the public, but with what we're actually working on in an emergency situation. And this is all to ensure the safety of the public, the safety of the bay water, the effluent that we put out from SD1, and provide clean drinking water. Yet I have remained commuting. I enjoy my job and I do appreciate it. And I have commuted 62 miles round trip and spent 2.5 hours every day of those 24 years reporting to my job. And I would have loved to reduce that time or miles, but I wasn't simply able to afford to live closer. And I'm not crying, but I'm just sharing you the experiences, an experience that the essential workers of the district have to endure every day. And we do it with a smile on our face and with a lot of integrity. So please provide us with a contract that would help us out a bit more. We did lose the 2011 back to the 5.5% total gross exponentially that we lost by continuing on the contract without a raise for those 2 years. So, well, thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for coming today.
Next, we have Eddie Chung. You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Yes. Hello, board members. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Eddie Chung. I work out of Oakport Yard in Oakland. My classification is storekeeper 2. My job is to help crews that come to the yard for parts and materials. I also accompany a heavy transport operator truck driver on deliveries of pipe and materials to crews on job sites all over the district. We go from Rodeo to Castro Valley and from Oakland to Walnut Creek. So you see that I go to many places and interact with many people in the course of my work days. I'm here to try to speak for myself and also for many of our union members that cannot make it to this meeting. I just want to say that in the course of my work days, going to all these sites and locations, I've talked to many of my fellow union members, and they all say this, that they cannot understand why the district does not appreciate the work and sacrifices that they have given coming to work every day, keeping the water flowing to our customers, working all hours of the day and in all weather conditions. All we really want is a fair and equitable contract. Something that shows the district values us as essential frontline workers, values our work and dedication to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chung.
Next, we have Adriana Suarez. Adriana, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Risha. Hello, Board President Linney, board members, and General Manager Chan. My name is Adriana Suarez, and I am a new business representative in the new business office. I'm here to speak about the ongoing contract negotiations. I believe it's important that you not only hear from Local 2019's contract negotiation team members, but also from the members within our union, which is why I want you to know that I support 2019's wage proposal and ask that it gets approved. I and my fellow 2019 union members deserve a meaningful raise. Inflation is high and management's wage proposal falls short of keeping up with California's cost of living. I also support 2019's equity proposals and believe it's been far too long since some of the positions have been reviewed. Lastly, I ask the board to give management's lead negotiator more authority so that our wage and equity proposals can be accepted. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brandon Lee. Brandon, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Great, thank you. Hello, my name is Brandon Lee. I'm a senior IT engineer in the ISD department. Hello, board members and General Manager Chan. Thank you for giving me this time to speak to you. I'd like to voice my support for Local 2019's equity proposals. I was disappointed to hear that you guys did not have a chance to see the presentation. And I'd like to take a chance to bring up some of my thoughts. I joined the district in late 2017. Since then, the number of technologies that we support and the job responsibilities have increased. The work we perform no longer fits the roles that were defined when we were hired. With the onset of the pandemic, ISD had to pivot to meet the needs of the district. And in a very short time, all the IT engineers pulled together to make remote work possible to 400 to 500 people a day. We had to learn and implement new technologies and new tools that had never been used before in the district. That challenge continues today. We only have a small team of IT engineers supporting these technologies. The Digital Workplace Solutions team, which I'm part of, has had to support Teams, SharePoint, Exchange Online, Office 365, multi-factor authentication, and all of the connectivity challenges that come with that cloud implementation. In other organizations I've worked for, this work would have been handled by several different teams and departments. As I look forward, I see those challenges increasing. Remote work will just continue, and with it, a bunch of new ways to access and process data. Already on the horizon, we're looking at tools like Power Automate, Azure Cloud Computing, and Mobile Endpoint Manager. I'd like to highlight also that the ISD supervisors, division managers, and department manager are in support of the equity adjustments. So in closing, I'd like to request a review of the proposed equity adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Next, we have Gus Chakala. Gus, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Hello, good morning, President Linney, members of the board, General Manager Chan. My name is Gus Chakala. I am an associate civil engineer in the pipeline division in my 10th year at the district. I'm a member of Local 2019. So I just wanted to speak today about the ongoing negotiations. I am really disappointed in the district's proposals so far. We're in a time of record inflation. We already know what the CPI was this year, and I think the year one increase is disappointing and kind of offensive. Feel underappreciated. And then the ceilings and the lack of a CPI plus is really doesn't really show that the board cares about its employees. The CPI doesn't even capture the outrageous home prices in the Bay Area. So it's going to be harder and harder to attract talent to East Bay MUD and keep the talent we have. So I just ask that the board gives the negotiator a higher limit, the freedom to negotiate a fair wage increase for the workers. So I support 2019's wage proposal. I just ask that the board acknowledge its workforce and acknowledge the unprecedented times of inflation and home prices in the Bay Area. So thank you.
Next, we have Joe Pangilinan. Joe, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Joe Pangilinan, and I am an East Bay MUD electrical technician. I'm also the chief steward of Local 444. Electrical technicians at East Bay MUD perform electrical maintenance on all equipment that provide normal and emergency power to all district facilities. We ensure that power is provided to East Bay MUD facilities so that the water flows from our reservoirs to our ratepayers. We, just like all of Local 444's classifications, respond to all emergencies to keep water flowing. Throughout the pandemic, Local 444 has reported to work to ensure the work in the streets gets done. The Bay Area has 3 of the top 10 most expensive cities in the US to live in. Housing, gas, groceries, childcare, and everything else you need to live here has increased in price. These items are not luxuries. They are essential costs that East Bay MUD workers must pay to live in this area. We provide an essential function that cannot be performed by an average workforce. To continue to provide great water, a real general salary increase is needed to ensure your employees can live in this area and perform at the highest level, a level at which East Bay MUD's ratepayers have come to expect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pangilinan.
Next, we have David Valenzuela. David, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Good morning, Board President Linney, board members, and General Manager Chan. My name is David Valenzuela, and I'm a senior IT engineer in ISD and been a long-term EBMUD employee for 26 years. I'm here to speak about the ongoing contract negotiations. I would like to say that I do support 2019's wage proposal. We deserve a meaningful raise. Inflation is high and management's wage proposal falls short of keeping up with the California cost of living. I also support 2019's equity proposal. I learned that the equity adjustment package for the senior IT engineer's position was not forwarded to you. I request that the package be forwarded to you, to the board for further consideration. You may ask, well, what do the senior IT engineers do exactly? The senior IT engineers oversee IT security, making sure district data and devices operate in a secure manner and protect against malware, viruses, ransomware, and the like. They also oversee the district databases, making sure data is available so that decision makers have accurate information and they provide it in a timely manner. They oversee digital backups, making sure district information is stored off-site in case of emergency. They also implement the ability to do remote work, as Mr. Lee has mentioned earlier. It is used by the district to conduct business remotely, and we keep the district digitally connected, so-called the network, the district digital network that runs from the city of Richmond in the north through to Oakland, down to San Leandro, eastward through Orinda, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, and onward up to our upcountry facilities, Stockton, Lodi, Pardee, and let's not forget the legislative office in Sacramento. To give you an example, take a look at all the devices that you currently use. Your iPads, your iPhones, Androids, your laptops, desktops, desk phones, all the wired and wireless connectivity. Email, the primary mode of our communication. The senior IT engineers, along with all other ISD personnel, make that happen. These are just some of the things we do to keep the district up and running. So I do ask the board to give management's lead negotiator more authority so that our wage and equity proposals can be accepted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Valenzuela.
Next, we have H. Levine. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Henry Levine. I've been an employee of EBMUD for over 20 years. I'm currently a senior IT engineer. My reason for addressing you today is to ask that you're able to fully review the request for equity adjustment for the IT engineer position and to support our EBMUD employees for requests for a pay raise. I'd like to start off today to ask that you do a full review of the documentation prepared by our group in support of that request. I would also like to share with you a summary of my duties and responsibilities over the years and detail how these duties have evolved, continue to evolve, and contribute to the success of the company. Lastly, I'd like to stress my support for all the employees at EBMUD in an equitable pay raise, considering the cost of living only really keeps us on par with the minimal or less than equivalent pay in the Bay Area. It doesn't actually give us a decent pay raise to add value to our positions. When I started the company 21 years ago, there was a requirement to have a bachelor's degree or equivalent to be hired as a system programmer. We worked long hours writing code scripts to automate office business functions and maintain databases. As a new employee, I was tasked to learn legacy technologies to utilize the mainframe technology, which was about 30 years older than me at the time. That was in addition to managing the current technology and the software, utilizing smaller, more compact hardware, requiring lots of hands-on and cross-platform disciplines to manage Unix, Windows, and the mainframe technologies. In the advent of the new virtual machine technology, I had to go back to training and master the administration of virtual machine hosts and its collective hive of virtual machines. Now, this new technology actually decreased the amount of hardware, but also increased the amount of management because it increased the amount of guests that were on those machines. 10 years ago, the district began emerging IT and OT disciplines in order to expand coverage of technology to include the industrial control systems platform. Now, my IT engineer role is also merged with both systems, meaning more training, more responsibilities. My typical day is spent applying both these disciplines to support the district and its operation, not only at the main office, but the water treatment plants and the wastewater plants. I spend most of my days working with electrical engineers in support of these industrial control system projects. Essentially, our IT engineering discipline is applied all over the company. We are integrated into almost every business unit.
Henry, your 3 minutes have concluded. If you could wrap up your comments.
Okay, in closing, I'd like to ask that you do a full review of our equity adjustment and also provide us with your support in supporting the employees in our negotiations to receive equitable pay raise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewine.
Next, we have Tyrell Jackson. Tyrell, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished board members and General Manager Chan. My name is Tyrell Jackson. I'm Water Distribution Plumber 3. I've been employed by the district 18 years on this go around, but I've been around the district for 29 years. I'm also a second generation employee. And as my first 20 years of my life, my father was able to raise a family of 5, have a house without my mom working. She was a housewife. He was able to afford to do that for a family of 5. Off of EBMUD salary as a heavy equipment operator. I can go to any heavy equipment operator right now and ask the question, could you raise a family of 5 on your salary alone? No one would be able to. If they were, they wouldn't be able to spend any time with their family because they would work so much overtime, it would be virtually impossible for them to spend time with their family. The district, like I said, I'm a lifelong East Bay Mudder. I like to say that. I'm proud to say I'm a lifelong East Bay Mudder. My dad retired here, gave the district 30 years. I plan on giving them all I can. But at this point in time, our salaries have not kept up with the times. And I also want to add that I am also a ratepayer. So I live right here in our boundaries. And I was lucky. I was able to purchase my house in the mortgage meltdown. I wouldn't even be able to afford my 3-bedroom apartment now on my salary for me and my family. So at this time, we implore you to please start looking at the cost of living in the Bay Area. It is going through the roof, and we need to be compensated to stay on par with most and all agencies in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Next, we have George Cleveland. George, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Good morning, President Linney, members of the board, General Manager Chan, and anyone else who's attending this session of the board. I'm talking about the contract negotiations. you've heard from the others who are asking what they're asking, and I echo that, but I have something kind of connected to it. One of the things that I've noticed in this go round is there seems to be a bit of back and forth on the district's financial health. We've been told at the start of negotiations, well, district, it can't afford what we need. Then we're told, no, we can afford what we need. Then we're told we're not. Then the budget presentation a couple of weeks ago appears that we can't. There's something I think that might help in the future in terms of revenue. It kind of is what I'll call a robust program to look at our large meters to see if they are registering the appropriate amount of water usage, if they're calibrated properly and the like. I say this because at this time, there are 3 of our very largest consumers we discovered we were underbilling them. And the calculations and corrections are still in progress, but the amount of extra revenue that is being brought in as a result of this is roughly $15 million. So I think it might not be a bad idea to look into that in the future so that there is more revenue coming in. And so we don't necessarily have to hear about the potential for shortfalls and the ability of not to pay the employees, because we do deserve a meaningful raise. The cost of living in California is outrageous. I bought my house in 2004. There's no way I could afford to buy it now. I mean, I could sell it for a profit, but I'd have to move out of the area to get something similar. So please take that in consideration. You know, like people said, give the lead negotiator more authority. You should. And just in general, it's like we work hard, and the current compensation package that's on the table is insufficient. It must be improved because, you know, you're always talking about capital projects and things of that nature. And I believe that your 2,000 or so employees are the largest capital project, because without us, you don't have anything. And, you know, if you want us to, you know, be happy employees, it's always best to make sure that we are appropriately compensated to keep up with the times. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Next, we have John Pennington. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your
just the members of the board. I'm here to echo basically what everyone else is saying. I'm part of Local 2019 as well. I joined the district 2 years ago, and so I guess by district standards, I am brand new to the company. And I want to say first off that I very much enjoy it here. I work in IT. I'm a senior IT engineer. And the main thing that I wanted to talk about was just kind of some of the things that I do and, you know, why I was hired. So I was brought in specifically for my skills with cloud technology, AWS and Azure, or things that I've played with. I am a Linux system administrator and also a Salesforce certified developer. Not that we use Salesforce here, but it means that I'm programming Java. Me and my team, which is only about 6 people deep, manage 150 computer systems, you know, over 50 databases. There's part of the core, you know, infrastructure team. As you know, the Bay Area is a tech hub, and salaries for those positions can be quite high. And so while I very much like it here, I don't want to, you know, give the impression that I don't. It does seem like there should be a review of the equity adjustment. We were told that you guys didn't get a chance to see the presentation, and we were disappointed with that. We think it would be great if you guys got an opportunity to look at it. And just wanted to say that I also support the wage increase that the union is offering or is asking for. And that's it.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Michael Morgan. Michael, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Good morning, members of the board and General Manager Clifford Chan. My name is Michael Morgan. I'm a plumber with EBMUD. I have been for the last 9 years, and I'm here to speak about general salary increases. I want to let you guys know I do love working at EBMUD. I've always been in this area. I was born and raised in San Lorenzo, and I've always lived in either San Lorenzo, San Leandro, Castro Valley area. However, I am in fear that I will be priced out of living here. I like working at EBMUD because I like to serve my community. My parents work for Alameda County, both of them. They've always been members of the community, and I like doing the same thing. However, I can barely afford to rent a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I drive an 06 Dodge. I don't live in luxury, but if something were to happen, I would be forced to move out towards Tracy, Manteca, that such way. And I feel I would lose as much of a passion for serving the community because it wouldn't even be my community anymore. I've also noticed we've had a major set of changes. I'm not the only employee that notices these things. We've gotten new tasks all the time, and we deal with it because we do love working here. But it is coming up more and more, just trying to afford to live in the community you work in. It's getting harder and harder every day. So I would strongly recommend you guys take a deep look at general salary increases for the area, because when we start to lose the ability to live in the area that we work in, people lose as much interest in working as hard as they do. So I would like to be able to still feel a sense of pride in the work that I do, being able to live in the community that I serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Next, we have Eric L. Eric, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risa. Thank you, Risa. This is Eric Larson, President, AFSCME Local 444. Good morning, President Lenny and board members, and good morning, General Manager Chan. Fiscal year 21 at East Bay MUD, revenues were $52 million over projection, and operations was $40 million under budget. Our finances were similar over the last 4 years, netting an estimated $466 million in revenues over expectations and operations expenses less than budgeted. What was done with all this money? It was moved into capital projects and used to pay down our debt. These were prudent actions of our finance department. And now we have a debt service coverage ratio that is 2.18%, which exceeds our KPI of just 1.6. Our bond ratings are AAA+, and we exceed almost every KPI in finance. We exceed every KPI in capital projects. We exceed every KPI in water quality and in customer satisfaction. We exceed every KPI except workforce morale. We haven't had a raise in 19 months. We're told that the district wants to keep wages at the median and compare us to Napa and Sonoma, but we are not mediocre. We just sent plumbers and instrument techs to Napa and to Sonoma to show them how to rebuild after their disasters. We need to reject Napa and Sonoma as comparator agencies for our equity adjustments. We need real wages here for our Bay Area cost of living. We're told that we'll backfill vacancies with overtime. We don't want more overtime. We want wages that pay us to afford the high cost of living in the Bay Area. As it stands, we have to pay the high cost of commuting from Vacaville, from Tracy, from Brentwood. Rising gas prices affect us. The rising cost of a reliable vehicle affect us. The rising cost of rent and food prices affect us. We are essential workers, and we have gone without wage increase for 19 months. At the same time, prices have risen some 5 to 6%, and is costing us, your essential workers who report to work every day. You're essential workers who were in a mandatory testing program because we cannot socially distance. Your janitors who keep the facilities clean and sanitize areas after COVID positive employees left and continue to clean and sanitize our facilities every day. Your grounds maintenance specialists who did not have a reserve rotation because fire abatement was so critical and continue to maintain our grounds every day. Your wastewater workers who treat COVID-laden sewage from the Crown Princess when she was docked in Oakland and continue to do so every day. your heavy equipment operators, your water distribution plumbers, your truck drivers who work shoulder to shoulder to maintain water services for our customers throughout the pandemic and all the time. It's been too long since we've had raise. It's time for the district's negotiators to come to the table with real and meaningful package that keeps us up with the inflation, with the high cost of living in the Bay Area, and keeps us the best water utility, and not mediocre water utility, the best. You can do that. The money is there. Put it in the budget for your most essential capital, your workforce. Return the morale we had by showing us you value us, the worker who is out in the middle of the night, returning services, repairing, replacing pipe, treating sewage, fixing pumps, maintaining facilities, keeping the water running throughout some of the most difficult times many of us have known.
Eric, your
We
3
are
minutes
here
have
every day.
concluded. Can you please wrap up your
Risha.
comments?
Thank you, board members. I am concluded. Appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for your time as well.
Next, I have 4 more hands just to give you an idea of how many speakers we have. I have Jakira Brown. Jakira, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Board of Directors, General Manager Chan, and fellow EBMUD employees and the public. My name is Jakir Jackianfa Brown. I am an associate electrical engineer, a local 2019 member, and an EBMUD ratepayer. As an associate electrical engineer, we plan, design, program, and commission the control systems that are used to deliver water to our customers. We work closely with IT to make sure EBMUD stays out the news by securing and protecting our systems from cybersecurity attacks. I've enjoyed working here for the district the past 9 years, but I am disappointed with the equity and wage proposals management is currently offering. Here in the Bay Area, inflation is high, home prices have skyrocketed in the past 2 years, and the proposal management is giving does not even keep up with the cost of living. I believe we deserve a meaningful raise and more thought put into equity adjustments. I'm asking that the board gives management's lead negotiator more authority so that the wage and equity proposals management offers us actually reflects what we are worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brandon Battiati. Brandon, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Hello, how are you? As you said, my name is Brandon Battiati. I've been at the district going on 14 years now. I'm a plumber for, had a big old long thing written up, but everybody's pretty much covered. So I'll just kind of sum it up. When I got hired here, there was over 2,000 applicants that came for the Plumber One opening. I think our most recent Plumber One opening, we had a couple hundred, wasn't even 1,000 people there. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Wages, benefits, and the amount of skilled labor. When I got hired here, if I was lucky enough to get hired here, I was making good money. Now, East Bay Mud, it's a good job, but it's just, as far as wages goes, you're just making enough money to survive if you live in the Bay Area. Benefits, they used to be better than all the other agencies, but now the other agencies have realized that they need to up their game to compete with agencies like East Bay Mud. So now they've raised their benefits and retirements, and so we don't stand out that way either anymore. And then skilled labor, there's less of us out there. And the ones that are left, they really can't afford to live in the Bay Area. So they've moved outside of the Bay Area. And that brings me to, if you guys would like to hire quality workers, keep the workers you have, keep them happy, keep them productive, keep the morale up. We need to get paid more money, basically what it comes down to. And the district knows where the employees, where the employees live and where they plan on hiring from. Because in negotiations, when we deal with equity adjustments, when they find comparator agencies to compare our jobs to, they base it off of the employees' addresses and where they might hire people from. And if one of the comparative agencies, like Eric said, is Napa County, I mean, that's pretty far away. So to plan on hiring somebody from Napa County tells us that we're not paying enough money, because why would someone commute that far? Well, because they can't afford to live here. And so the wages is a big deal for morale. And then you guys might not notice it yet, but we're having trouble getting quality workers. And the workers that we have, the morale is real low. So I would like to fix that, and I'm sure you would like to fix that too. And the way to do that is wages. So like everybody else said, please consider giving the negotiators more leeway in our wage packages. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Next, we have Yvette Rivera. Yvette, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Thanks, Risha. Several months ago, while talking about the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland civil rights lawsuit against Craig Spencer, Laura Costa, and East Bay MUD, I mentioned how Craig Spencer's employment contract had a loophole, that I believed that that loophole was against public policy, and that it ensured that he wouldn't have to pay back East Bay MUD benefits if he committed a tort against East Bay MUD employees. Basically, I said that in his contract, it ensured that he would have to have committed a crime in order to be denied benefits. I've had several people ask me, how could this happen? How could this happen in 2021? And I point to two things that happened at East Bay MUD. One, when Craig Spencer got his service award, he commended the board of directors for their unwavering support of East Bay MUD employees and how it was unparalleled. And given the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland lawsuit against him, Laura Costa, and East Bay MUD, I can see why he was so appreciative. The second thing is that I always point to, and that people don't really know about, is in the Local 21 MOU contract, and anyone can look at the 2017-2020 contract, there's a section under indemnification, and it's on page 5, section G. And I'm going to read a couple of lines from it, but basically it's board ratified, in my opinion, it's board ratified impunity. And the section is called indemnification. And I'm just going to read a few lines before I end so that I don't run out of time. Section G, definition: the district shall defend and indemnify its employees and former employees against liabilities for acts or omissions committed within the scope of employment pursuant to the California Torts Claim Act, Government Code Sections 810. Unless the district determines there exists one of the exceptions provided by the act listing grounds for refusal to defend or indemnify the employee. The scope says nothing in this section is intended to expand or limit the district's duty to or discretion to defend or indemnify employees under the California Torts Claim Act. However, that the district shall provide for the defense of an employee in a criminal action or proceeding brought against the employee if the criminal action or proceeding is brought on account of an act or omission in the scope of his or her employment as an employee of the district. B, the district determines that the employee acted or failed to act in good faith without actual malice and in the apparent interests of the district. The district will not provide a defense to an employee of a criminal action or proceeding if the employee fails to reasonably cooperate in good faith in the defense of the action or proceeding. The act or omission was not in the scope of his employment, and the employee acted or failed to act in bad faith and with actual malice. There's more, but I'm going to stop there because I'm going to run out of time. I just want to thank you for your time, and I just want to add that, you know, if the district is serious about, you know, this racial equity and justice project, I really believe that they need to give the people that they hire, especially the new people that are coming on, the power to enforce this zero tolerance policy that the district is moving forward on. I just took the supervisor management training on preventing harassment. And I believe in order to move forward on all of those issues raised in that training, that the district needs to start with eliminating indemnification and impunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have an additional speaker, Colin Moy. You should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha. Good morning, President Lenny, board members, General Manager Chan. My name is Colin Moy. I'm Senior Environmental Health and Safety Specialist. I'm a ratepayer, Local 2019 Executive Board Contract Negotiation Team member, and I've been an employee for 15 years. I'm here to speak to you to share my personal story because of 2 points. One is family, and secondly is economic sustainability of our members. My first day of working at the district was greeted by Marge Lewis and felt, hey, this is a family organization. She was a longtime friend of my father-in-law, Barry Kong, who also worked at the district for over 30 years. And if he were alive today, he'd be happy that I'm a part of this family. And he was a very proud district employee, and he was very fortunate to be a first Asian to buy a house in the Piedmont, which is probably out of reach for many of our members to purchase a home in Piedmont. Over the years, our members have been working to do more with less, still maintain highest quality services to the public. We've had many interactions with the public, professional organizations, and regulators who would go.
Oops.
Colin, we lost you. Can we have one additional, we have another speaker. We have Stella Tan.
All right, let's see if Mr. Moy was able to join us again.
Okay.
After
Stella, you should be able to unmute your mic. And
Hello,
your
board.
3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Hello, Board President Linney, board members, and General Manager Chan. I'm here to speak about the ongoing contract negotiations and echo the voices of EBMUD employees who have spoken today. As a member of Local 2019, I'd like to express my disappointment with the most recent district counter for the general wages, show support for the Local 2019 wage proposal, and note the dramatic rise in inflation this year and the Social Security cost of living adjustment of 5.9% for 2022. I ask the board to show EBMUD employees that you appreciate our efforts and our well-being in action, not just words, as you work with your team on the wage proposals this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Colin did not come back into the call. And we have no other speakers for public comment.
All right, well, I think we'll have to catch him another time. One of the problems with the technology that we have to use to conduct our meetings these days. So with that, though, we will now convene to discuss closed session agenda items. And we're scheduled to return here for our regular board meeting at 1:15 p.m. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 9th, 2021 regular business meeting, East Bay MUD Board of Directors. In accordance with the Government Code Section 54953, subsection E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. First off, the Planning Committee met this morning and will report out under item 17. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Yes.
Director Young.
Yep.
President Linney.
I'm here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the
to the
republic
republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have a presentation. General Manager Clifford Chan will present the Government Finance Officers Association's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting.
Thank you, President Linney. And for the 16th consecutive year, the Government Finance Officers Association has awarded the district the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for its annual comprehensive financial report. The ACFR is evaluated by an impartial panel of judges to ensure it meets the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating the spirit of transparency and full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the ACFR. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. The core team responsible for the final production of the report consists of Yenny Coburn, Lawrence Fan, Matt Hauk, Andrea Miller, David Sue, Stephanie Toy, and Melody Wang. These individuals demonstrated teamwork and integrity in financial reporting, which exemplifies the values of East Bay MUD. In addition to the core team, all the accounting staff and various staff throughout the district provided critical information to ensure a clean audit and an award-winning report. Please join me in congratulating the entire team.
That's great. Great work. Glad to see that the one year when we don't get it, it's going to be astonishing. Hopefully I won't be around then. We'll just keep it rolling. But thank you for all the great work. There are no announcements from closed session. We are on to public comment. If members of the public wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand at the bottom of your screen feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. Please contact staff with that information. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, if I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track the time and inform each speaker when the allotted time is concluded. Madam Secretary, what do we have here?
At the moment, I have 2 speakers for public comment. First speaker, Lindsay Edelman. Lindsay, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board and General Manager Chan. I'm here today to ask the board to support the proposed equity adjustments and increase the lead negotiator authority on wage increase offers for the upcoming Local 2019 contract. I'm a Local 2019 member. I'm an Oakland native, and I've worked at the district for 3.5 years in water conservation. But I think it's worth mentioning I'm not a ratepayer because I'm a renter living in Oakland with this harsh reality that Bay Area property ownership or living somewhere without housemates just isn't in the cards for me in my future. And it feels even more so with the economic impacts of COVID and rising inflation. In Alameda County alone this past year, prices went up 25.9%, and it's projected to increase another 7.1%. So I'm speaking as an employee and not as a ratepayer, but if I could afford to be a ratepayer, I'd be really upset to see how financially well off the district is, saving millions of dollars, in contrast with its plan to continuously increase water and wastewater rates to pay for infrastructure improvements. I would ask, why should I pay for infrastructure improvements when the district earned $51.8 million over budget in water revenues? But again, I am not a ratepayer because I can't afford to be one. I am an employee, and as an employee, I feel disheartened that my workplace plans to offer meager wage increases amounting to the value of gas or just grocery money, while it's saving $40 million in a reduction of operation costs. And those operation cost reductions are a product of everybody's careful planning and hard work. And I believe that hard work should be paid for accordingly. As an employee, I can't help but ask, how much does my workplace really value me and my coworkers and the work that we do? And how long can we live off a wage that can't meet the inflation that we're seeing? As an employee, I'm asking you to please raise your authority and support equity adjustments so that my colleagues and I can continue to live in the community that we serve. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Next, we have Nick Lawrence. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Welcome, East Bay MUD employees. Can anyone hear me here?
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome, East Bay MUD employees, members of the public and the board, to episode 7 of A Dangerous Condition of Public Property. I'm your host, Nick Lawrence of Orinda. My email is eastbaymud@nicklawrence.com. Last episode, Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, about false information provided by East Bay MUD to my fire department is available online. Today's episode is The Posse. Previously, I've spoken of the dangerous condition which exists for over 18 months in the form of the out-of-service fire hydrant on Tappan Terrace and the broken promise made to me by General Manager Chan's brother, Carlton, to fix it with an 8-inch pipe, and the false statements emanating from the mouths and pens of district employees about the cause and status of these events. In fact, there are 50 other additional out-of-service fire hydrants, all paid for by district ratepayers. Is the one closest to your home out of service too? I can tell you. And during these past meetings, I've also heard your varied concerns, often about seeking equitable treatment on the job, and I support your cause. The sole fire hydrant on my street is now served by an unsafe and insufficient 2-inch blue rubber hose with only 13% of the capacity of the promised 8-inch pipe. A new scheme to spend ratepayer money to substitute a 4-inch rubber hose with just 25% of that capacity will suffer the same infirmity and is therefore unacceptable. All this foot dragging and penny pinching from a public agency which sits here, pats itself on the back, awards its white collar workers huge bonuses, yet leaves my neighborhood, maybe yours too, doing fire season without a functioning fire hydrant and my family drinking water through an unsafe rubber hose for over a year and a half. That the board and management has failed to act upon this dangerous condition, which puts ratepayers at risk, affecting not only my neighborhood and the public at large, is unconscionable. In prior episodes, I've been serious or humorous or even pleading without effect. The board talks bad about me behind closed doors, maybe talks bad about you too. Still, I'm not mad, but today I address you, the many members of the public, and you, East Bay MUD employees, present here online so you are aware, and invite you to provide additional context and or ethical support of my efforts, and perhaps to join the posse. For instance, has the district been untruthful, made unkept promises, or other breaches of the public trust? Do other unsafe or dangerous conditions exist? What about the inadequate and unsafe 2-inch rubber hose? Have you seen the suppressed memo? Do you know why the district, like PG&E, puts ratepayers and the public at risk by failing to fix dangerous conditions? There's greater strength in numbers, so I invite you or your rep to join the posse and share what you know in confidence to me at eastbaymud@nicklawrence.com. To the board, I add, time's up and high time to fix the dangerous condition, as your Mr. Chan told me, with an 8-inch water supply. Tune in again, everyone, next meeting for episode 8, as more dangerous condition of public property is revealed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Other speakers?
Next, we have Colin Moy.
Colin, yes, we lost you there.
Yes, hi, thank you. Sorry. Just shows that we really need our IT senior software engineers.
I knew you were going to say that. You didn't disappoint.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, just to summarize my earlier introduction, I'm a ratepayer on the 2019 executive board and contract team. And, my points were all about family and maintaining economic sustainability of our members. And I was leading to my father-in-law, who was a 30-year employee at the district, and he really loved it here, and he was fortunate to buy a home in Piedmont, which very few people at the district probably could now these days. But we've been doing more with less, juggling a lot of different job duties, and yet still maintaining a very quality service to the public. Many external organizations see us as a great organization and respect our work that we do. But I'm here to support our local wage proposals as a meaningful recognition of past sacrifices and continued excellence. Our members deserve a decent cost of living wage to buy a home, save for retirement, and thrive in their communities they live. Please allow greater authority to the management negotiation team so that our local wage and equity proposals may be accepted. I hope you consider treating our members like your family members again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay. Next, we have Yvette Rivera. Yvette? You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Risha. At this morning's board meeting, I talked about Craig Spencer's employment contract loophole that I believed was against public policy. I forgot to mention this morning that Craig Spencer's contract verbiage also provided him an exemption from East Bay MUD Policy 217. Basically, his contract ensured that he wouldn't have to pay back East Bay MUD benefits if he was found to have committed a tort against East Bay MUD employees. The loophole spelled out that Mr. Spencer would have to be committed of a crime to be denied benefits. This morning, I said several people have asked me how this could happen in 2021. Specifically, how could a government contract that is ratified by this board of directors so boldly violate public policy and district policy 217, severance pay for certain officers, assistant officers, and civil service exempt employees? I went on to say that I believe Craig Spencer spelled it out at his service award speech by thanking the board of directors for their unparalleled support of East Bay MUD employees. And given that the Ariel Bland and Saji Pierce civil rights lawsuit named Mr. Spencer, Laura Costa, and East Bay MUD, I could clearly see why he was so appreciative. This morning, I also read from the East Bay MUD Board of Directors ratified 21 MOU contract. I'll spare you. I'm sorry I read so long from that. That was unintentional. But the contract for Local 21 in the section called indemnification spells out the level of impunity for supervisors at the district. It's a section that I like to term as board ratified absolute immunity. It seems to me that the verbiage was probably originally borrowed from a law enforcement MOU, and it seems like overkill for water employees, but I'm sure it serves a purpose to make supervisors and managers feel like they'll be protected under many circumstances. I ended up my board meeting comments this morning by saying that if the district was serious about their racial equity and justice project, that they needed to give the new people that they hire, the ones being asked to implement the racial equity and justice project, the power to enforce the zero tolerance policy that the district is touting in the new supervisor preventing harassment training. I believe in order for the district to move forward with implementing everything in that training, the district needs to start with eliminating indemnification and impunity. Once stakeholders at the district see that there's a high price to pay for misogyny, discrimination, and retaliation, only then will things change at East Bay MUD. I'm just going to finish by reading a line from the new training that's been put out to supervisors and managers. It says, our organization has a zero tolerance for any acts that could be considered as abusive, no matter the number of instances. If you are being treated in a manner consistent with that described here, report the behavior to senior management or human resources. And the training lists 6 points, but my favorite are: 1, patterns of humiliating and intimidating remarks, and 2, gratuitous, sabotage, or undermining of a person's work performance. And that's it. I'm going to end right there. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Do we have any other speakers?
We have no other speakers for public comment.
All right. The comment period then for non-agenda items is now closed. We'll get on to the consent calendar. Frank, you said you would like to pull item 10, is that correct? You're on mute, but I could read your lips.
That's
any,
correct, thank you.
Any other items to be pulled from the consent calendar? I will then entertain a motion.
I'll move the remaining items.
Second.
This is John.
All right. Motion by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson for items 1 through 9 and 11 through 13. Madam Secretary, let's have a roll call on that.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Linney.
Yes, so that carries unanimously. Item 10, Frank, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I want to appreciate the fact that, I'm sorry about that, that Grace is going to be Grace Sue is going to be taking on the job of the groundwater sustainability plan that we've got going. And I want to suggest that this will be a task of some major importance, but also some challenges. And so, Grace, I don't know if you're listening in or not, but I'm going to suggest to you that you've got an interesting resource for having dealt with working with the city of Hayward, and that's Derek McDonald, as he remembers an occasion when he and I worked with some of that, as well as Andrew Lee. They're a formidable team that could be a good resource to you, Grace. This project, my concern will be that indeed the city of Hayward does belly up to the bar for the responsibility that they've said that they're willing to do. And with that, I will move the item forward.
All right, so do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Mellon, seconded by Director Patterson. John, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just not a question, a comment. Hopefully both Frank and Doug and Clifford saw the email I sent last Friday from SFEI regarding groundwater basins. It specifically talked about this area. And I should have shared it with the entire board, but I wasn't sure on the Brown Act if it could be. So I didn't. If it can be, maybe it can be shared, but it was actually a great article on exactly what we're talking about right here.
We can attach that as an item for an info memo for this week.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, John.
All right, Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Here.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Linney.
Yes. All right, we are on to determination and discussion.
So the first item for you, President Linney, if you'd like to take a look at your notes for.
Yes. So you're going to introduce all the items, but I realize you're on this item. I can take this one. So the first item is actually a rather somber one. We would like to adopt a resolution today in observance of the life and public service of Alameda County Supervisor Wilma Chan. Wilma Chan, a passionate activist for civil rights, education, and healthcare, who rose to become the first Asian American elected to the Alameda County Board, passed away on Wednesday, November 3rd. Wilma Chan was born in Boston, Massachusetts, to Chinese immigrant parents. She held a BA in history from Wellesley and a master's degree in education policy from the Stanford Graduate School of Education. She later taught and served as legislator in residence at the University of California in Berkeley. In 1990, she became the first Asian American elected at the Oakland Unified School District Board of Education. Realizing the need for more Asian American representation in places of power, she ran for the Alameda County Board of Supervisors in 1994, became the first Asian American elected to the board. Wilma made her priorities clear early on: healthcare and services and access for the underserved residents of Alameda County. In her first 2 terms on the board, she chaired the Alameda County Children and Families Commission that annually distributed $20 million for children's services. She initiated a pilot welfare to work project in Oakland, San Antonio neighborhood and developed a strategic plan on the future of healthcare services in Alameda County. Wilma was elected to the California State Assembly in the year 2000. There, her leadership secured services for aging and long-term care, jobs, economic development, government organization, and banking and finance. She was a member of the Legislative Women's Caucus, Environmental Caucus, Internet Caucus, and the Smart Growth Caucus. She expanded preschool opportunities for toddlers by working to gain $100 million in the state budget. In 2006, Wilma agreed to author SB 1953 on behalf of East Bay MUD to get the lead out of drinking water plumbing. AB 1953 established a landmark California lead-free standard for drinking water plumbing. AB 1953 was enacted into state law in 2006 and served as the model for subsequent federal legislation that enshrined California's AB 1953 lead standard into federal law. After 2 terms in the Assembly, she returned to Oakland and regained her seat on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors in 2010, where she continued her work as an advocate for the underserved. One of her most significant accomplishments as supervisor was keeping the San Leandro Hospital, the sole acute care facility in San Leandro at the time, open after Sutter Health announced it would close the facility. Until her untimely death, Wilma Chan was a champion for her community, particularly for those who are underserved. In 2021, she expressed her support for federal funding for East Bay MUD's Upper San Leandro Water Treatment Plant improvement project that will provide benefits to numerous disadvantaged communities as well as to the greater Bay Area. Wilma never sought the limelight, never hesitated to cut to the chase, never backed down from the fight to help those she served. In that spirit and dedication, we honor today with this resolution. And I just want to add, I had the great opportunity to work with Wilma in a number of circumstances, not only with East Bay MUD's legislation, but many other opportunities and things that came up in her district. I lived in her district. She approached me when she first ran. I was very impressed with all her credentials, but all the work that she did always surpassed what was ever on paper for what she did. Her passion that she brought to the fight made her so successful. And just recently, I had an opportunity to talk with her about a real strong passion that she had in a food pharmacy, the concept of providing food for people who are underserved, who don't have it, so that people don't have to go hungry and can get the right kinds of food in order to live a healthy lifestyle. And it's that kind of dedication that really makes her stand out.
Hear, hear. She was a soldier.
Bill, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, I want to join with you and indicate that Wilma Chan was a friend. The AB 1953 is an example of a collaborative project that we worked on together way back when Randy Knaus was still here. And we scoured the whole state to get that through. I use that as an example because there were many, many times that she came to our aid and assistance in East Bay Mud and also in my ward. Wilma, as the president recently described in his comments, was concerned about the underserved. We're in a time of gentrification, and we have many, many rivers out there that people are stranded beyond. And for a person who is dedicated to working on that issue and getting results, I just wanted to make those comments and say, Wilma, you are missed, but not forgotten. You live on in our hearts.
You're here.
Thank you, Bill. And before I call on Marguerite, it would be my honor to make the motion for this resolution. Marguerite, you have your hand up. And you're on mute.
You gotta unmute yourself, Marguerite.
You covered a lot of territory in talking about Wilma's accomplishments and contributions to the East Bay and to California and really to the nation. The thing that I wanted to add is the way that she touched hundreds of activists and inspired them to take on the fight in whatever issue they were passionate about. And I saw this most in while I was working with Clean Water Action. She would regularly make time out of her schedule to come and brief our Canvas staff and make a personal connection with those folks and encourage them to commit themselves in whatever way they could to a life of civic engagement. And I just think that's very rare. And she always did so without ego, as you said, without needing to take the limelight. So I just, she will be, I was shocked as everyone was, to hear the news over the weekend, and just wish her and her family well, and know that her fight will be carried on by those who she has touched in her life.
Bill, would you like to second the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a, Madam Secretary, would you please call roll?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Absolutely.
Director Mellon,
Likewise, absolutely.
Director Patterson,
With all my heart.
Director Young,
Yep.
President Lenny.
Yes. John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, not related to this item, and I apologize. I missed it in the consent calendar because of the way my Acrobat notes are here on my computer. On item 12, which I am in support of, I just had a question. If we could just go back, and if I can ask that as a quick question, if that's acceptable, President Lenny?
I'll make this one exception, but don't do it again.
I promise not to, thank you. In the BD1, it talks about the demand being 339,000 acre feet of water at the build out. But on page 120 of the BD1, it actually lists it at 446,300 acre feet, which is considerably different. So I was wondering why the number on page 120 is so much more than the number on page 107.
Give us one moment.
And I apologize, I meant to ask this yesterday and I didn't have that part of my stuff open.
Not a problem. And I have Jimmy Eloy now joining us. Maybe he can respond to that. Jimmy, are you there?
He's in the meeting.
Yes, I am here, and I don't see the difference that you're talking about. So
If you go to page 120, it actually has, and I'm jetting down to that right now here. Wait, I went too far, I'm sorry. The beginning of the BD1, it talks about 339,000 or 336,000, sorry. And on page 120, I'm trying to get back to it here. It has a different number, and let me get to it, and I can tell you the paragraph here as soon as I get to it. I'm sorry. My computer is working slowly today, like I am. Shoot, just a second, I apologize. Okay, 120, under page 3 of 3, attachment 1, water usage estimates. And it has a total of 446,300 gallons per day, not acre feet, gallons per day versus the 336,000 in the very first item of the agenda. And this is under water usage estimates.
okay. I don't have a good explanation for that right now. That's something that I would have to check and get back to you on.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a typo someplace, or there could have been revised with conservation principles that they had to adopt that dropped it down. I don't know. But if I could find that out, that would be great.
I can send you an email when we get the information, Director Coleman.
Do that.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I do want to add back on the resolution for Wilma Chan. We will be sharing the proclamation with her family, as well as the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. Moving on, next we have the Oakport Emergency Declaration. So on Monday, November 1st, one of 3 hypochlorite tanks at the Oakport wet weather facility failed catastrophically. On November 3rd, I declared a district emergency in consultation with President Linney to expedite the installation of a temporary tank. And before you is a resolution to ratify the emergency declaration. And we have Eileen White, Director of Wastewater, to provide some background on the failure and the plan moving forward.
Great, thank you, Clifford. Well, good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. Today, I'm going to give a brief presentation on the chemical tank failure at the Oakport wet weather facility and ask for the board to ratify the general manager's declaration of an emergency. Next slide, please. In today's presentation, I'm going to begin by giving you a brief background on the wet weather facilities. Then I'll describe the incident that occurred and the district's great response to the emergency. And then I'm going to conclude with next steps. Next slide, please. To manage wet weather flows, the district owns and operates 3 wet weather facilities: Oakport near the Coliseum, Point Isabel and El Cerrito, and San Antonio Creek near Lake Merritt. During October's historic atmospheric river, all 3 wet weather facilities were brought online and discharged over 100 million gallons to San Francisco Bay. Next slide, please. Last Monday, November 1st, one of the 3 10,000-gallon sodium hypochlorite storage tanks at the Oakport wet weather facility catastrophically failed. Sodium hypochlorite, also known as bleach or chlorine, is a chemical that is used to disinfect wastewater to remove bacteria and viruses. Needless to say, as you can see in the photo on the right, the tank cannot be repaired. Immediate installation of a temporary system is required to provide adequate sodium hypochlorite supply at the Oakport wet weather facility to ensure that the discharges from the facility are in compliance with the provisions of the consent decree. The good news is no staff were injured when the tank failed, and the emergency response by district staff was effective at preventing any regulatory violation. Next slide, please. On the left here, you can see the yellow sodium hypochlorite pooled in the secondary containment. The volume of the secondary containment area is about 30,000 gallons, which is nearly 3 times the volume of the tank that ruptured. The middle photo gives you a sense of scale. The rupture was over 6 feet. And the right photo shows the inside of the tank and the inner liner that also failed. Next slide, please. So I briefly wanted to highlight the district's great response. When the tank failed, 10,000 gallons of sodium hypochlorite drained into the containment. Within minutes of the incident, the pump station was turned off. And as you can see from the map, the pump station H is downstream of Oakport. By turning off the pump station, we prevented the sodium hypochlorite from traveling to the plant until we were prepared. We quickly convened a meeting and decided that we wanted to send it out into the interceptor and let it come in contact with the wastewater so some of the chlorine would be consumed. Because when sodium hypochlorite is added to the wastewater, it reacts with the organic matter and becomes less potent. So then we turned the pumping plant on, and what we wanted to do was send the slug of chlorinated wastewater to the plant in one slug. And that's what we did, because by that time, the main wastewater treatment plant staff were prepared to receive this slug of water. And what they did is we diverted the wastewater with a high level of chlorine to the 11 million gallon wet weather storage basin. Fortunately, we were no longer using the wet weather storage basin. The storms had receded, and we were able to then capture all the wastewater. We began then to slowly drain the storage basin once we realized that we had received all the highly chlorinated water, and we were able to mix the regular wastewater with a stream of wastewater with a high level of chlorine, and then bring it back to the front of the plant. I'll show you in the next slide. Throughout this whole process, staff was performing water quality analysis to ensure that we met all regulatory requirements. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of the main wastewater treatment plant with the storage basin, and the yellow and red arrows show how it fills and drains respectively. When the storage basin is drained, the wastewater is recycled back to the influent pump station, which is the start of our wastewater treatment process. Next slide, please. So our next steps is on Wednesday, December 3rd, to expedite installation of the temporary chemical storage tank system to assure availability prior to the next event. The general manager, in consultation with President Lenny, declared a district emergency in accordance with policy 7.03, emergency preparedness business continuity. This policy authorized suspension of the competitive bid process and allowed the award of contracts not to exceed $500,000. So since that declaration, we've worked very closely to identify a contractor who could quickly expedite the delivery of a liner system and tanks that could be installed. So that's the second step. And then third, we're going to continue to investigate the cause of the tank failure to inform our asset management from across the entire wastewater system. Next slide, please. Yes.
When you say replace, you said tanks. Is there? There was only one failure. Is that correct? Are the other two tanks still in service?
Yes. So good question, President Lee. So one tank failed. The two other tanks are in service. And what we're going to do in the next slide, please, is this multi-pronged approach. So what we're going to do is we've identified a contractor who is going to have the temp tanks and liner delivered on Thursday, the holiday, and the contractor is going to install 2 storage tanks that make up the volume of the one tank that we had. The tank that we had on site was 12 feet in diameter, and it had a height of 16 feet 6 inches, and it had a capacity of 10,000 gallons. So instead of having a tank that size, they're going to install 2 smaller tanks that will exceed that capacity. And then the district staff's going to install the double containment piping, chemical pump, and eye wash station. So we're going to install 2 temp tanks to make up for that one storage tank, but we're not going to do it in that exact location where the tank failed, because that tank needs to be removed. Separately, we're going to remove, and this is part of our 3-pronged approach, we're going to remove and replace the ruptured tank with a tank of equivalent volume that is an extra temporary tank that they had at a water treatment plant. And we're going to install that new tank and piping next week. And district staff will perform the electrical instrumentation work. And now it looks like they'll be able to also do the piping. So what we first want to do is get 2 temp tanks to replace what we lost. And we want to be comfortable that we've got enough chemical. And then we'll go in next week and replace the existing tank And that takes more time for contractors to get and clean up. And also they'll be working in the vicinity of the 2 other hypo tanks. So we want to make sure that we're not causing another problem by having somebody work there while we have the 2 tanks there. And then part of our approach is we've been talking to our vendor to see if they could provide a trailer of chemical at the site to have on hand to directly fill tanks. They're looking into that. In the interim, we're going to order chemicals 48 hours in advance of any storm that may require operation of the Oakport wet weather facility. We already have the 2 tanks full. That's 20,000 gallons, but we're down to take 10,000 gallons. So since we're down 1/3 of our supply, if we know a storm's coming on a Friday, Saturday, we'll order more chemicals so he can quickly replenish the 2 tanks. If it turns out we haven't depleted that supply, we'll then divert that chemical driver to the main plant, and we can use the hypo at the main plant. So it's a 3-pronged approach. Does that answer your question, President Lenny?
Yes. Yes. The other question I had is just, was there any air quality issues with the exposed chlorine?
Yeah, there was no air quality issues.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, we quickly drained it into the interceptor where we knew it would be consumed by all the wastewater with all the pathogens in wastewater. Great. Next slide, please. And this kind of gives you just a visual of the temp facilities. Mainly what I wanted to point out was this temp facility is going to have a secondary containment area that's going to be about 20 feet by 33 feet with 3 feet tall walls. And the black tarp you see is a chemically resistant fabric installed on a modular aluminum bracing system. So getting the tanks is easy. It's making sure you have secondary containment, and we didn't want to have any problems with our secondary containment. Next slide, please. And then finally, I just want to conclude with the timeline. So it was a week ago yesterday on November 1st when we had the tank failure. Staff did a great job responding. On Wednesday, Clifford did a good job in consultation with President Lenny in declaring an emergency. And today we're asking for board consideration of ratifying the general manager's November 3rd declaration of emergency. If you do that today, the contract will be on site on Thursday, starting to deliver the tank and the liner, and hope to have them installed by the end of the week. Next slide.
I would so move.
Second.
Great, thank you. We appreciate all the support of the board.
Great job, you guys.
So just kind of curious, the tank, the temporary tank, are we just borrowing that essentially for a while, or?
So we're renting the 2 temp tanks that are going to arrive on site on Veterans Day. Those we're renting from Rain for Rent. So we will rent them through April till the end of the rainy season. And they're not in the same location. Meanwhile, the following week, next week, we're going to take the extra temp tank they have at Orinda for their Orinda project that they're not using right now. And we're going to install that in the exact area where the tank failed. And we'll end up buying a new temp tank for the Orinda water treatment plant that they're not using right now.
All right. Any other questions? Can't see anyone. All right. So I had a motion by Lisa. So a second. Frank, I see your finger up there. I'll take that as a second. This is for the emergency declaration. Madam Secretary, will you please call roll?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
that carries unanimously. Eileen, thank you and your amazing team, as always, to responding to these issues and problems that come along. Again, I thank you to all of you for that.
Thank you, Eileen.
Look forward to the final wrap-up report that I'm sure we'll get.
We will
Thank you for your support.
bring the report when the emergency concludes. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you to the board. Just moving on to the general manager's report. First, we have 3 items. First is the coronavirus update. We do continue to track cases in the Bay Area, especially looking for the potential for another winter surge. Our deadline for employees to get vaccinated or submit an exemption was on November 1st, and we have Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance, He'll provide an update with the latest numbers, regulatory changes, in particular changes with federal OSHA, and how that may affect us.
Okay, thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Linney. Good afternoon, members of the board. And we'll proceed with the update here. So on slide 2, we're showing the positive case rates for our 2 local counties here. You've seen this graphic before. It had been declining. The most recent data shows a plateauing out, and this is 7-day average data. So if you look a little bit more closely at the most recent data over the past few days, there's actually an increase, and this is similar to other demographics, other counties, both rural counties, coastal counties, Southern California, Northern California, statewide. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick. So hopefully this is not a full-blown winter surge, but we'll watch it very carefully. In terms of why is this happening, keep in mind that only 63% of the state, and that's the entire population, not just the eligible population, but only 63% of the, is the camera on? Thank you, Janetta. Okay, now I'm appearing. Okay. Thank you. So only 63% of the entire state is vaccinated, which is relatively low. The rates are obviously higher in the Bay Area and certainly at the district, but that might be one of the reasons. Here at the district, we have now 149 positives. We had our most recent over the weekend. About 12 employees are at home and not working, and that's a combination of those that are recovering from symptoms or from a vaccination and don't feel well enough to work, as well as those in quarantine who are unable to telecommute. So about a dozen employees are unable to work right now because of COVID. And if we look a little bit more closely at our vaccination rate on the table in slide 3, you can see that 87% of the district, and these figures are a few days old, so they're probably a percent or two higher at this point, but right now our latest data is showing that 87% of the district's employees are fully vaccinated and 90% have at least 1 dose or have 2 doses and are waiting that 2-week period before they can be officially labeled as fully vaccinated. So it's comparable to the counties around us, at least here in the Bay Area. The age group, the 5 to 11-year-olds just became eligible for vaccination this week. So I think the county rates will probably drop as a larger slice of the population now becomes eligible for the vaccine. But overall, that's good news. More of the population is getting vaccinated, and hopefully that will stem this most recent uptick that we're seeing here locally and statewide. Okay, so as for the vaccination policy, as the board is aware, the vaccine mandate was initiated last week. So employees needed to be vaccinated or have an approved exemption by that date. And so if we look a little bit more closely at the numbers, these are all consistent with the numbers on the prior slide. 1,700 employees have been fully vaccinated. That's about 87%. Another 50 are in process of getting vaccinated. So that brings us up to 90%. And in the exemptions, we have, give or take, about 150. Most of those are religious exemptions. And I believe some of these are still being processed, but nearly all of them have been approved so far. So that's about 150 employees in that group. So when we add it all up, about 1,900 employees are vaccinated or have an exemption that's been approved, and that's about 98% of the district's employees. So those that are still testing, so this is in the exempted group, and otherwise the other employees are about 40 employees who are still outstanding. Those employees are being tested right now on district time at district cost. The weekly cost for this testing, it was higher back in September when we started. It was probably about $35,000 a week. We were testing almost 400 employees at that time. But as employees have been vaccinated, that has steadily gone down. And if we can switch to a less expensive type of a test, an antigen test, which gives us faster results, we can, and if we limit the testing to about 150 people in that exemption group, we think we can get the cost down to about $8,000 a week. Okay, regulatory changes, which Clifford was referring to. So we don't make up the rules. All of our safety protocols are derived from either a health order, OSHA regulation, or CDC guidance, and we usually adopt the most conservative of all of those. when we have the opportunity. Sometimes we don't have the opportunity. Usually OSHA regulations are more strict than the health order, so we of course follow the OSHA rules in that case. But all of our rules are derived from external to the district, and we try to be as conservative as possible. Meanwhile, as the board is aware, the federal administration has developed a new policy as promulgated through federal OSHA, requiring private employers of more than 100 with more than 100 employees to vaccinate or test their employees. So this is for the private sector, and they also require state-level OSHA to develop similar or more stringent policies for state and local agencies. So the board is probably also aware that not shortly after this was announced, it ended up in the courts, and the constitutionality of this federal action is going to be in legal matter for a while. But either way, whether this proceeds or doesn't, or proceeds at a slower pace, it is unlikely that federal OSHA will adopt anything more stringent than's already happening in California, or for the district at that matter. So either way, we don't anticipate a lot of impact from federal level OSHA changes. Be that as it may, there may be minor impacts to record keeping and some other documentation that's required, but by and large, we don't see a big impact at the federal level. Meanwhile, independent of the federal actions, Cal OSHA is independently developing, I would call them fine-tuning, not substantive changes to the workplace safety protocols, but they are doing some fine-tuning here and there, and that may take effect in December, so we're tracking that. And then the last thing that is out there is that local health orders have contemplated, and in some cases implemented, changes to face coverings for vaccinated people. That is out, so that would not be applicable to the workplace. That would be Cal OSHA's domain. But we are tracking that as well, and we have not adjusted our own face covering policy at the district. We're just kind of waiting for the dust to settle on all of these things before we make a change. And so we still have a relatively strict policy with face coverings at work, both inside and outside. And I think finally, just to let the board know that we're continuing the meet and confer process over impacts. And I mentioned that if you do the math on the slide from, or on the slide a few slides ago, there are still about 35 or 40 employees that have yet to tell the district that they are interested in an exemption or are getting vaccinated. So those employees will begin the disciplinary process shortly, now that we have kind of characterized everyone at this point. And I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, for that presentation.
Thank you, Dave. And for the next presentation, we'll just do our drought update. We want to give you an update on our water supply and drought operations, follow up on a number of questions the board asked during the last two board meetings, and discuss our customer outreach activities. We'll also provide a high-level summary of our drought assistance for Marin Municipal Water District, which we covered in much greater detail in the Planning Committee this morning, including discussing principles for wheeling. And we will share that with a full board on November 23rd. We have a number of speakers, starting with Dave Briggs to do the water supply and drought operations update.
Okay, thank you, Clifford. Hello again. And let's see here. Okay, here we go, slide 2. So we are enjoying the early precipitation of this water year, but it is obviously too early to change any of our plans. So as we continue to enjoy the rain and keep track of it and measure it, the plan stays the same with Freeport and all of our operations. Just on the second bullet here, I just wanted to point out that this is a significant fall in terms of precipitation, which I'm sure the board is aware of. And then this last event that passed through last night has raised our upper McKelvey watershed numbers to about 28 or 29% for the season. So the precipitation that we've already received is about 28 or 29% of what we would get in an entire year. It's about 33% of our season normal, not season to date, season normal here locally. So the reason why, I mean, there's a million numbers we could throw at you at this point with characterizing how much we've received to date, but I think this is the best set of numbers. It gives you a sense that we still have a long way to go in terms of the entire season, but what we've received so far is significant. So I really do like looking at these numbers more than any others. The other interesting thing that's going on is that our water production completely fell off the table. As we were going through early October, first, second week of October, we were producing water consistent with a summertime demand level, 185 MGD. And then as the wet weather started in maybe the third week of October, and it's really kind of been more or less constant since, we've dropped down to a winter level demand and really greatly reduced our production accordingly. So real significant drop. We are, as far as our water production goes, we are in the dead of winter right now. And then looking at our operations for supplemental water, Freeport diversions began in early October. We plan to go through February. We divert about 1,000 acre feet every 4 days. So the slide here is showing 8,100 acre feet from November 4th. Well, we're probably over 9,000 acre feet at this point because we're pulling in 1,000 acre feet every 4 days. We will divert up to 35 or a little over 35,000 acre feet by the time we get to February. Just a brief note here, I think I mentioned it last time. We had to suspend Freeport operations for a day or two, particularly the river diversions off the Sacramento River, because so much storm water was pouring into the river. We don't have a lot of experience operating Freeport in a massive storm event, so there was lots to learn, and we quickly got back online as soon as we could. We completed our wheeling for Contra Costa Water District in October pursuant to our agreement, and so at this point forward, we're just going to be pumping our own CVP water every day. And with that, I am going to turn it to our next speaker, who is Linda Hu.
Afternoon. I am on slide 4. So at the board meeting last month, the board asked for cost information in a graphical format, comparing the unit cost of supplies to recycle water and also desalination, as well as the operating costs of Freeport. So in response, I have a few upcoming slides to present the cost charts. And first off, the operating cost of Freeport, so this is the marginal operating cost of Freeport, is $387 per acre feet, and that includes labor, power, chemicals, fees, and also includes the purchase of CVP water. Next slide, please. I'm on slide 5. The chart, this chart here shows the unit cost for our existing and future supplemental raw water supplies in a single dry year. On the y-axis is the raw water supply unit costs, and that includes any water purchase cost, the raw water conveyance costs, and also accounts for 20% gain sharing. And you can see along the x-axis each of the water supply source, McCollum, CVP, transfers, Los Vaqueros expansion, and also groundwater banking. And I want to point your attention to the number that you see in each bubble. That is the supply yield for each of the supply source in thousands of acre feet. And you can see that the size of the bubble is relative to the yield amount from that source. And also we're showing existing supplies in solid circles as compared to future supplies. So you can see from this graph that the raw water supply unit cost for each source is from McCollum, it's about just under 300, about $280 an acre feet. Next is CVP at $387 an acre feet. And you can see a jump up to water transfers at about $1,100 an acre feet. And LVE at just about $700 an acre feet based on our analysis of that project to date. And then for groundwater banking, that number is really, it's a number that we have from the WSMP 2040 adjusted to current day dollars for a potential future groundwater banking project with San Joaquin County. And that comes in at around $1,200 an acre feet. Next slide, please. So the board also asked about the unit cost for recycled water and desalination and how those compare, and that's shown on this graph here. This chart actually shows the unit cost for recycled water and desal two ways, every year yield and also dry year yield. Every year yield accounts for these projects operating every year, which is the case for recycled water, and it could be the case for any future desalination efforts. And for general comparison to other supplemental supplies that operate in drought years, we're also showing these costs you see on this figure here as dry year unit costs. And how that's calculated is that with a dry year yield in 3 out of 10 years factored into the unit cost calculation. I just want to point out that it's very challenging to compare projects that operate every year to projects that operate during droughts. But if you're looking at the way it's expressed as dry year yield, the every year projects will appear more expensive, as you see here.
Linda, Director Coleman has a question.
Yes, Director Coleman.
Thank you, Linda. Good information here. In the capital, is this taking into account the capital improvement for, recycled water? You have to build a whole new redundant system of pipes, pumping stations, and storage facilities. Whereas with desal, you're building the facility, then you're tying into the tying into a aqueduct or tying into our system. So is that taking into account the difference of? I'm a big fan of recycled water, but it's also very expensive to build the system to make sure it's delivered to the customer.
Yes, you are correct. The recycled water cost here, it's actually not quite, as you pointed out, not quite an apples to apples comparison. For recycled water, that's total cost to deliver it through an entirely separate system, treatment, distributed to the tap. And that's what's captured in that recycled water number. The desalination number you see here is a really rough number that of a project that was evaluated in WSMP 2040 that's inflated to current date dollars, and that desalination captures the upstream costs, the treatment plant, the desal plant, the raw water conveyance to bring it short of into our system, and then it does require further treatment then in our system and distributed. That's not captured in that desal cost. It's really the raw water treatment and supply costs.
So how do we get the apples to apples comparison? And then the other thing is I'd like to, whether we ever do desal or not, that's to be determined by a future board, I assume. I would like to know how it could be done on a energy neutral with wind, solar, and tidal motion. So you're not using actual energy of gas, electric, or whatever the case may be to run the system and treat it.
So first question, we can't really do an apples to apples comparison for because recycled water is just an entirely separate system, right? You're basically treating that water to tap. Otherwise you're just looking at the treatment of secondary effluent, which we have to treat anyway for discharge. So that's why for recycled water we usually express it as total cost.
So are we talking about recycled water to use for potable use here?
For non-potable.
For non-potable. Okay.
So that requires a separate system. That cost for recycled water. What I can say is that 9,000 acre feet, the existing, that does include, like what you point out, that includes the facilities to get it to the tap that's existing. I guess to bring it more to an apples to apples comparison, we can look at just the operating costs and not the past capital sunk costs, which is included in that number currently, say versus the other raw water supplies that you're just looking at the incremental cost to bring that supply into the system.
I would be interested in that. And again, I would like to have it looked at from a standpoint that we are using green energy, wind, solar, tidal for desal. And depending on where the facility is, if it are ever built, there's plenty of options, such as within the Delta region.
Okay, so you're saying for any future consideration of desal, kind of think about the energy neutral.
I think that is important from an environmental standpoint. It meets the goals of the EBMUD from a standpoint of not creating more impacts to the environment. And it's done in Australia and in the Middle East, so it can be done here too.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other questions?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has their hand up. It's impossible to see, but just to sort of tack on to John's comments. The same, John, in terms of carbon neutrality or not increasing our energy footprint to get more supply through these methods. The same could be done for recycled water. And then I guess the other way or question I would have is whether since you're making a comparison to recycled water as for non-potable use, you could make it apples to apples by looking at, recycled to indirect potable reuse, the idea of, pumping it back up into the, one of the reservoirs and putting it back into our system once treated, or putting it through a second level of treatment at Orinda or something like that, right? And then it would be making it apples to apples.
Right, if you were looking at treating it to a level that could be incorporated into our drinking water system.
Right, and including the cost of getting the water to that place, which would be pumping it back uphill.
Right, and I believe we did look at that cost. It was a while back when we presented to the board as part of the 2019 Recycle Water Master Plan update. I recall we looked at some future potable reuse options and had some costs determined at that time as well.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so if you're going back to this chart, so you can see, based on what we're showing here, you kind of see the recycled water expresses every year unit cost. It kind of, it's roughly about $2,000 per acre feed, and the dry year cost will be about 3 times as high. And for desalination, that number for the unit cost is roughly at around $3,500 an acre feed, and the dry year expresses a dry year unit cost will be roughly 3 times as high. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm now on slide 7, titled Pardee Tower Photos. So on one of the drought update slides that was presented to the board last month, there were 2 photos of the Pardee Reservoir Tower that you see here. And the board asked if when each of the photo was taken, specifically the month and the year. So we did some research and found that the recent photo we knew was taken in July of this year. The historical photo was actually taken, we believe, in March of 1977. So we recommend that for any future uses of these images, we'll be sure to cite the month and the year when each photo was taken. And that's all the slide that I have. And next up is Mike Toglini on regional drought assistance.
Good afternoon. Just going to provide a brief update on our working with Marin Municipal Water District. Next slide, please. Oh, I have control. Thank you. So on regional drought assistance, we had a good discussion this morning at the Planning Committee to provide a more complete update of the overall program and to solicit feedback on principles for any future wheeling agreement with Marin Municipal. And based on that feedback, I'm going to update what's shown here on this slide a little bit. First of all, we've been providing regular updates at board meetings since June, and we'll continue to do so under the drought, General Manager's drought report. This morning, as I mentioned, we went to the Planning Committee to discuss principles of agreement with Marin Municipal. And based on that feedback, we're looking to come to the board at the next meeting, November 23rd, to provide draft principles that respond to some of the comments that we received this morning, and also to share at that point any principles that are under consideration by Marin itself. Marin may have its own principles of agreement that it is also proposing, and we would want to share those with the board so that we could see the consistency between the principles from East Bay MUD and the principles from MMWD. After we do that and provide an opportunity on November 23rd for the full board to provide any additional feedback, we would then come back to the board on December 14th for consideration of principles of agreement. Those would lay the foundation for any agreement that would consider wheeling water from Marin under an emergency. And that agreement would likely come to the board for consideration in January or February of 2022. Are there any questions on that? Next is Andrea Pope to discuss the MMWD related community engagement.
Hello, good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. To tie into what Mike was just discussing, I just wanted to let you know what our efforts are in regards to reaching out to the community to ensure that we're getting accurate communication and engagement on this issue. There has been some misinformation, kind of in the beginning, especially in the media. So from the community standpoint, there are some dates, the Richmond City Council meeting and Point Richmond Neighborhood Council that were attended, and we're reaching out to a variety of neighborhood councils. We're also reaching out to Mayor Butt through Director McIntosh, and also to the Mayor of El Cerrito. And we did post to Nextdoor to the Richmond community about a week ago. And we're also going to be participating in an ad hoc meeting with Mayor Butt. So that's a sort of high level summary of some of the community work. I also want to add that there's certainly media interest on this issue. And at this morning's planning committee meeting, we had 3 members of the media listening into the conversation. KTVU did offer a preview of this issue being discussed at our meeting today, and also interviewed us for a evening newscast. So I would expect to see that later today. Also, we did reach out to the Richmond Standard just to provide contact information and ensure accurate reporting. Next slide, please. So regarding drought, we have the last in our fall series of Water Wednesday talks coming up on the 17th. And, we got a lot of questions. Well, why can't you just do desal now? Why don't you just build another dam, and et cetera? So our aim is to answer those questions for our audience that Wednesday evening. Next slide, please. And media-wise, every time I do these slides, they are out of date within a day, but we did a media release actually this morning on the Water Wednesday, and we've had certainly more than 9 stories on drought and water supplies, both amount of rainfall, reservoir levels, and the Marin Municipal Water District pipeline proposal. Next slide, please. Wanted to let you know that we did launch a second round of advertising on Pandora. The picture on the right showed up on my phone when I was listening to one of my favorite artists, and I was happy to hear one of our East Bay Mud ads, but we're reaching about 200,000 people using this ad and ad series, and it's working out really well for us so far, and allows us to target our audience. The new set of ads, so we have 10 total, includes Dave Brubeck's Take 5 and Journey's Don't Stop Believing. And so let us know if you happen to hear it. Next slide, please. These are some of the topics that we've been focusing on in social media. So certainly we continue to promote our Water Wednesday series. We continue to provide water supply updates. And also, we have been getting not a lot, but a couple of emails or posts on social about questions about changes in taste. So we want to address that as proactively as we can. And importantly, we want to remind people to turn off their irrigation now that it's raining. Next slide. To summarize some of the approaches that we've taken regarding communications with our community so far, as you're aware, we've done a series of billboard ads back in September. We've done a lot of print advertising in local magazines and newspapers. We've done the bus shelters, which relate to the billboards. We've done digital advertising, which I just described, the Pandora ads. We've certainly talked about drought water supply and customer pipeline, and we also use our water smart messaging to reinforce whatever message of the week, so to speak, is what we're focusing on. And certainly we've gotten a lot of exposure just through media updates that we provide and interviews. And we have Alice Tui and myself, both serving as spokespersons for the state Save Our Water campaign. So they've done some pitches and to us if it's something that's in our wheelhouse. And we've provided, I think, 2 interviews so far. Continue to do our community outreach, and there's just an ad in I think it was the Oakland, I can't remember actually, sorry, but we do advertising for local businesses in like chamber newsletters and things like that as well. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I noticed the song on, you said you were, sorry, the Pandora targeting there was Big Bad Handsome Man.
That was the song I was listening to.
Okay. Marguerite. Probably had a better question than I did.
I don't know if it's a better question. It's actually, it's adjacent. It's communications. And it's, I appreciate the breadth of our outreach work on the drought and the report. A few weeks ago during the atmospheric river weekend, we had a really large main break in Oakland. I'm sure you're aware of. Hundreds and hundreds of customers, maybe 1,000 customers in all were impacted by, diminished water pressure and if not, sort of loss of service. I know that we use WaterSmart to do communications. One of the people that contacted me, was like, why don't we have better alerts like, PG&E and et cetera when there are outages, and use the AC alert. And so we recognize it's kind of a different, it's kind of an adjacent, it's not proactive communication, it's reactive communication when something happens. And right now on our website, WaterSmart, that's our way of being able to reach people by email. But it's not, it doesn't tell people that we'll also, it might further induce people to sign up for WaterSmart if they knew that it would also mean that they'd get notifications if their water service went down. And I don't know if we use it in all events where, there's more than X number of people that are, without water, or when we can't notify people with door hangers, et cetera. And this probably is not a topic that you're ready to respond to today, but it is something that I'm interested in, how we can do better at alerting customers when stuff happens that we weren't prepared for, and we need or want to get the word out quickly to people.
So just really quickly, just on that one, Director Young, we are still finishing up the lessons learned from that break in Oakland, and we will share it with the board and as well as some of the customers that you had referred us to. And I'll also, share with you the criteria where we do send out messages to people when we do have an unplanned outage, and all that information also gets posted on our website. But we'll summarize it in a concise way that you can see and the rest of the board can see.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention some of the street construction work that's going on in my neighborhood, and how EBMUD, PG&E, all of the utility providers are working together in the network. We had door hangers, we had everything you can think of to get in touch with all of the population. And some of my neighbors complimented me on your work and your contact. And Clifford has kept me in touch with everything that's happening around the reservoir and the repairs that we're doing in that sector of Balmoral Drive. Much is going on. And we're very much on the positive side of people as I address them. And I'm just wanted to say, being home and confined a bit, I hear all of the radio in particular and the TV. And you're doing a wonderful job of getting the word out and contacting people. And I just wanted to encourage you to keep going in that direction, keep our banner flying high. East Bay Mud is on the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Patterson.
Andy, your hand is up.
Yes, I also do want to commend the robust outreach that we have been engaging in. And just a quick question, are the shower songs on our Twitter? I would like to help promote those a bit. I think it's a wonderful, innovative activity.
Thank you, Director Katz. Yes, we do. Let me see. I will find out for you if we promote. Yes, we do, is the short answer. And I'll make sure that you have that link.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you. And just one thing, I just, Mike Tognolini talked about this, but we did present the principles for wheeling at the Planning Committee. And, I would appreciate any feedback from the other board members before the November 23rd board meeting. Director Young, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it sort of like zoomed by. The Planning Committee did, and I'm sort of front loading my Planning Committee report, but we did get the principles today. Generally, the committee was very pleased with the direction they're headed, had some comments around the transfer, sort of how we don't end up getting disadvantaged by Marin, by how we coordinate transfers of water, making sure that we have a clear understanding of Marin meeting their own water targets, and some other items that staff is going to take back to address before the board considers the principles at the next meeting, and including Marin developing their own, or us being able to review Marin's principles, which they're adopting on kind of a parallel process. So I think we've got, I think all of us felt that we're on the road to a pretty good set of assurances. If this project does go forward, which is not at all a sure thing, lots of moving parts. But it feels like we, thanks to Lisa's strong statements and some others have really, slowed the train down and taken the time to really consider, the impact and how we want to align this project with the principles that we apply to all of our projects in terms of protecting our customers and protecting the environment, but also being a good neighbor in times of water crisis. So we gave staff the go-ahead to make the changes that we discussed this morning, and to hear it in front of the full board 2 weeks from now.
This
I don't know
is
if
John.
Lisa, Frank have more to add.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Margaret. I was just wondering, since there are some changes made from the Planning Committee document, if we can get them ahead next week or this week, just so we have a chance to look at them rather than getting them right before the meeting on the 23rd.
Yeah, I would say they're relatively minor. I would encourage people to go back and look through the Planning Committee, document. It's probably 90% of what you'll see November 23rd. And I mean, I'm assuming we'll see it all, when we see the packet before the next board meeting at the minimum in terms of legal noticing. I don't know, Clifford, if we can get something earlier, if that's, doable or not.
If we can get earlier, we'll try to stick in an info memo before then, but definitely by the board meeting on the 9th. So. Oh, 23rd.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the last item is the monthly report. I can answer any questions, and I just quickly want to respond, Director Coleman, on your question about El Cerrito. We did get the answer. So the city submitted their request using the multifamily unit demands from the old SEC study, and it got updated based on the new SEC study, and the multifamily unit demands did decrease based on the new study. So that's why you see the difference.
Okay, great, thank you. I was just curious when I saw the huge spread.
That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Clifford. We are now on to reports and director comments. Committee reports, minutes from the October 26, 2021 redistricting ad hoc sustainable energy and finance administration committees are included in the agenda packet. We'll now hear from Director Young on the planning committee, today's planning committee.
Great. By the way, I'm off. Whoops, I'm going to go off video because I'm having connection problems that are in addition to the Marin drought assistance update and principles of agreement. We heard 4 reports. All of them were well received and accepted unanimously. That included an update on our wastewater pretreatment and pollution prevention programs, the update on the South Interceptor structures rehabilitation, and our wastewater treatment plant odor control program update, which was amazing because we only had 6 complaints last year, which is down from 18 the year before, and I think 50 just a few years ago. So just a big hat tip on the odor control program work and progress. And then we also had a report on the McCullamy watershed routine maintenance project update, which will include a mitigated negative declaration that we will be hearing at our next board meeting to make a determination on. And that is that.
All right, thank you, Marguerite. Please submit items for future consideration to the general manager. Director comments, are there any director comments at this point? John?
Sure. Real quick, I'd like to do a shout out to the IT folks at EBMUD. I had my phone died and they had to convert stuff over and it was not easy and they were able to take care of it. So many thanks to the IT folks and making my phone coordinate with everything with my other integrated systems. I also want to thank Clifford and staff for the response to the consultant design amendment agreements over 25%. This is good what you're doing. Thank you. And the central sand on the recycled water. It's interesting. I thank you on that update as well. At some point, would it be appropriate? I know it's been staff to staff contact, but to have board to board contact on these issues of central sand to look to see what more we can be doing with recycled water within our area.
All right, Frank?
2 things.
Bill, I see your hand. I'll get to you.
Oh, Bill can go first.
Well, mine is a request for adjournment in honor of my retired pastor, David Kitely. And I don't know, Frank, if you have something you want to inject, because this is going to take a few minutes.
Yeah, Bill, why don't I'll call on you last, if that's okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
So
I first wanted to thank staff for preparing some speaker notes for me. You know, this is a thing that Dell used to be very adept at. Dell and I were a team. I am requesting this meeting be adjourned in honor of Dr. David Kitely. That's Shiloh Church of Oakland, and he's the pastor emeritus. Some of you will remember Shiloh in the history of this city. And it was led by Dr. David Kitely and his wife, Marilyn, who served as co-pastors of Shiloh Church of Oakland from 1970 to 1986, and as senior pastors from 1986 to 2008. Shiloh and its history is ingrained in Oakland. As you know, many national congregations came together in this city, even leading when Mandela was free, filling the Oakland Coliseum with people in reference to this event. It was led by Shiloh. In San Francisco, we had another gathering at Candlestick Park. Over 40,000 people attended. I say that to say numbers are important, but most of these are numbers led back to the foundation, the religious foundation found in the Christian community. Dr. David traveled extensively and held leadership conferences, renewal conferences, and prophetic conferences in over 45 nations. The Shiloh ministry is currently impacting the USA, Canada, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Philippines, Ethiopia, and is expanding as the Lord directs. As a member of Shiloh Church, I work with Pastor David's Shiloh nonprofits that provided for the people in need in this city and beyond, including healing and deliverance, prayer ministries, food and shelter, plus the Reverend Batita Cody's street ministry that reduce drug trafficking and crime alongside NAACP's civil rights and social equity campaigns. Dr. David is part of the East Bay Mud history as he stood shoulder to shoulder with the board and staff during the dedication ceremony for the Freeport Regional Water Authority. God called Dr. David home on October 29, 2021, while his celebration took place on November 5, 2021 at Shiloh Church as he was brought home from Atlanta, Georgia, where he retired. His memory and legacy lives on in the hearts of the people around the world. Thank you, East Bay Mud family, and your letter can be directed to Shiloh Church. I left the address, and his daughter and son both are pastors. I wanted just to say that Melinda is a daughter that he was truly proud of. And as a youngster, she held a meeting at Shiloh that flowed all out into the street when we were trying to protect Joe Samuels, the first Black police chief of Oakland, for he worked with the Christian community in turning things around in terms of the conditions of Oakland at that time. And I just say that to say she is a great woman and a true product of the Kitely family. Thank you very much, board.
All right, thank you, Bill. And we'll again have adjournment in his memory Go ahead, Marguerite.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that. Somebody had quite an impact on our community. I just want to say that I will be having my ward briefing open to the public on Zoom next Wednesday evening, and look forward to having hopefully quite a good turnout.
All right.
That's
Andy?
I just wanted to briefly mention that I'm here in Glasgow in Scotland for COP26, where I've been engaging in the negotiations last week and this week, as well as some of the events at the United States Center here. Climate change is a serious existential threat that's affecting our water supply in the East Bay, as well as the air we breathe when we deal with catastrophic wildfires and so many other impacts. Proud of the work that we've done at the district to be on a steady pathway towards zero emissions in our water sector, and look forward to looking at our energy policy for our wastewater sector in the near future, and being an innovator in all of these important ways, like our R2 program. So that's part of the story that I'm taking with me when I talk with other jurisdictions from the United States, and as well as from other countries here. So I wanted to share that because of the importance of the international discussions happening right now.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks for being there. And we have some serious bragging rights that way. So I hope you are able to spread the word and inspire some others to try and reach up to the goals that we've also established. And thanks for making the meeting today. That's a long ways.
Yeah, just shy of midnight right now.
Yeah.
But I'm doing fine.
All right. Any other board comments? All right. Well, with that, then we'll adjourn today's meeting. Again, a reminder that this meeting will be adjourned in memory of Dr. David Kitely, Pastor Emeritus of Shiloh Church in Oakland. And we'll see everyone Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021 at 1:15 back here. This meeting is adjourned.